Yeah, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Mr. B here from Mr. B and Friends Trip Seekers. How you going? Well, I'll bring on my guests at the moment. Usual guys, they're friends. As usual, first of all, we have Gerald from Midwest Night Watchers. How you going, Gerald?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, mate. Yes, it's one of those weeks, isn't it, where I mean, it's getting cold here, mate. It's winter's starting to set in. Well, you guys are now getting our sun. Well, we're getting all chill now. But then again, we don't get as cold as you guys, mind you. When winter time, I think the lowest gets to around Perth area is about 8 or 7 degrees Celsius. So it doesn't hit the freezing point. So anyway, whoops, I've got to remove something from the screen there. Excuse me, guys. That's got a, yeah. Hi, there we go. How was that? And well, when Robert gets back, I mean, he should be back very shortly. He'll be joining us, and so things have been a crazy week. I mean, looking at what's happening in the world lately, it's makes you wonder. Yeah, the banks must be making a lot of money these days. This is it's going in my mind. I call it the banking cartel. I mean, they're worse than the bloody mafia. You know what I mean? I mean, they got their finger in every pie, and of course, what's happening in Europe at the moment with Russia and Ukraine, and now what's happening with Israel and the Palestinians, and I mean the banks must be making a lot of money. That's all I can say is, and then you look at all the other factors where the shortage of housing in the world now has set the prices of properties through the roof. So, and it makes you wonder that the system has failed. The system has failed. The rich get richer, the poor gets poorer, and I think it's about time people like the everyday working man, the everyday man, stop paying the bill. I wonder how the banks will feel if everybody stopped paying the mortgage at once. You know what I mean? Now, say we've had enough. We're not going to take any more, and stop paying their mortgages and stop paying their land rates or land taxes. Well, and here we have Mr. Professor Bauer himself. How you going, Prof?
Good.
Yeah. And as I was saying, get back to what I was saying, I mean, what would happen if we all just stopped paying our mortgages and stopped paying the amenity, things like our electricity and our rates, land rates and things like that, just to teach these bankers a bloody lesson saying, listen, it's designed for the rich to get richer and the poor get poorer. There's always a new tax. You pay tax on taxes. You pay tax on your wages. You pay tax on everything you buy. And then when you own things, why should you have to pay GST, goods and services tax, when the people that's selling the product is actually being taxed on their profits? I mean, you're paying tax on taxes. So how many times do you have to pay tax on the income you earn? That's the crazy thing about it. You buy a house, you pay taxes to move into a house. Oh, you've got all these cost of you got to pay tax on your house. And if it costs $100,000 for every 100,000, you pay something like $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever it is. But in Australia, I think on a $400,000 home, you pay something like a $20,000 tax up front on top, and then you pay your land rates every year. But I mean, what I'm actually getting down to is the banks are making it all the way. Now, I can't say who really started these wars, but I know it's not me. I know it's not you. And I know it's not the everyday working class man. It's the very few at the bloody top controlling the situation that sit on their big fat asses drinking champagne saying, this is what the working class people, we need this war, just because somebody else has got a different political agenda. Now, I mean, I'm not into politics. I don't like talking politics, but because it looks like it's a global disease, this politics. It's not just in America. It's not just in Australia. It's every freaking government in the world have got their political agenda. But they're not really speaking for the people. If the people had a choice, they won't want to send their kids to war. I don't want to send my kids to war. You don't want to send your kids to war. What you want to do? What do you want to do? You want to sit at home, go to work every day, come home to a loving family. You want to love your family, enjoy life with your family, have quality time with your family. And I think it makes that difference if you're Chinese, Russian, or whatever. We all have the same values, family values. We just want to love and just live in peace. Just get on with life. But except the few people at the top, the few. Now, we're talking about 8 billion people in the world. And if you want to talk about how many people at the top, let's put down 10,000 out of 10,000 people, leaders in the world. Well, say 20,000 if you want. Whatever. But it's nowhere near a billion. It's nowhere. And these 10,000 people or 20,000 people, what you want to call it, are controlling how the rest of the world has to live. They don't give a shit if they're going to missile somebody, and blow them out of existence. They don't give a shit. They're going to make war. But who makes money? The banks. The banks. Hey, what? You can't say one bank, because when they talk about banks, they talk about the global banking system. That's what they talk about. It's the global banking system. So they're all in the same club. They're all sleeping in the same bed, as they say. But how do we get around this? I know I can't change, but I think as a collective, as everybody, if we turn around and all say, look what's happening with these students. I don't know who's real or who's not real. They're protesting about what's happening in Palestine. And I think it's disgusting. Any war is disgusting. I mean, I'm not pro-Jewish and I'm not pro-Palestinian. All I say is that personally, war is wrong, no matter how you look at it. The only time anyone should fight is for their freedom. If somebody wants to take away what your way of life. I mean, it doesn't have to be political. It could be home invasion. You still fight for your right, still fight for your freedom to protect yourself. And that's a natural God-given right. But when somebody else tells you that if you don't go and shoot somebody, you're not a patriot, no, you can be a pacifist and not believe in war. And that's a God-given right as well, And that personally, if somebody says I'm a pacifist, I'll say, okay, you don't have to go and fight. Shouldn't make that person fight. What? Because he becomes a thorn in the ass. Exclude him. I mean, so where do we go from here? Where's this world leading us? It's insane. It's crazy, and it's greedy. So what's your take on this, Robert? While I have my medicine.
Well, there's a whole bunch of minefields you just laid out there that,
of course,
because
it's got to be said, though. It's got to be.
Well, yeah, but what you're saying has been said for the last few decades.
Of course,
there's been a consistent theme of people realizing that whoever they are at the top, holding the strings, pushing the buttons, and dialing the knobs, have been doing this for a long time, and people have been recognizing that they not only have they been doing it, but they've been doing a very poor job of it. So all of the wars, the economic issues, the facts that you laid out about, just wanting to live happily ever after in the pursuit of happiness, freedom, and liberty, that's just an innate part of our nature. All of the symptoms that are making that difficult are from this other bullshit that's been going on for decades, in my opinion. But that bullshit is falling apart under its own weight, and it's imploding under its own inept incompetence of being able to execute whatever plan was set forth. Because the one thing that is clear, at least to me, in my opinion, is that the one thing these folks who are running things into the ground don't understand is human motivation. They have been able to capitalize on some of the psychological capabilities that, the way you can cause people to think certain ways, and all the carefully crafted, curated narrative designed to create mental parasites that make it difficult to think, let alone engage with other carbon-based meat suits. But the bottom line is that it's all falling apart. And that's why I think what we're seeing, the stuff that you're talking about, like I said, has been on the top of mind of a lot of freedom-loving, independent individuals for decades. But it's now reached a point where the getting in the way of that by those who've been running everything has gotten so uncomfortable that you don't even have to be anywhere near awake. You don't even really have to be paying that much attention. The majority of the shit that you're being fed and coming across is what's going on in the world, and the way to think about it is on they got the burners on full. They got the oven all the way up. They got the water faucets in the kitchen sink at full blast. Everything is coming out because it's all broke.
Oh, of course it's broken. It's shattered. It's shattered.
The systems are broken. All of the systems, not just our education, not our financial, our administrative and the form of governments and the legal judicial system, all of it's broke. And it's broke under its own weight, and it's self-imploding. As it self-implodes, it squirts out, and there's shrapnel. And there's collateral damage as it implodes, because all the stuff and the people that were involved in it are now experiencing the implosion, the self-imposed implosion. So as that happens, this is a good thing. I have to emphasize this. In my opinion, what we're witnessing, yes, it's terrible, it's nasty, it's got all kinds of crazy shit going on in it that makes it very uncomfortable, very frustrating, highly annoying. It's also very entertaining if you look at it from a certain perspective. Like, from the way I look at it, I'm like, yeah, you guys are going to do this because this is your only call. You don't have any more plays that you can pull out of the book and do the Hail Mary. You've used them all up, and all of them have failed miserably. So what's happening is all the systematic nonsense and annoyance that's happening is very necessary. It has to happen. It has to happen because the systems that are broke right now, they can't be fixed. They can't be repaired. They can't be, there's no more bubblegum, baling wire, or duct tape you can put on this shit. It has to be replaced.
I agree with you 100%.
And in order for it to replace, it has to be gotten out of the way. You can't go about replacing something when the previous shit is still in a pile in front of you where you need to do the replacing. So all of this is, yes, it's painful. Yes, it's evil. Yes, it's all these things of just dire nonsense that none of us want to put up with. But it's not only necessary, but it also shows that we are at the beginning of the end of the previous bullshit. We are now about to see the cleansing of that crap. And we're going to have this totally different environment in which we're going to have the ability to have the liberty of the individual, the sovereignty and the provenance of oneself in a way that we've never had up until now and currently, but it's falling apart. We're chattel, right? We are, they couldn't have and do what they do without us to do it for them. They wouldn't have any of the shit if it wasn't us providing it for them in the way that we've been herded. So all of that's going to go away. Authority, all of the institutions, all the credibilities, all of this credentialed crap that has been lofted as, being high, mighty, and authoritative has turned out to be bullshit. There isn't one expert or anybody with the TLA tattooed on the ass end of their name that I have any trust in. Yeah, I am basically, of the the Reagan model, trust but verify. I've dropped the trust. I go straight to verify with any one of these people that I don't care what it is, climate change, financial stuff, science, medicine, academic, every one of them have failed miserably. And if you can't see that it's a total collapse, then you're not paying attention.
Well, I agree with you 100% on what you're saying there, but there's also there's a thorn there. It's like to have change, to have this change, we've got to get rid of what we have. And to get something new, we're going to have an intermission in between, a space between where there's going to be chaos, a system where it's totally collapsed. And I'd see that's society itself, it's going to run rampant until order takes place. And then you got what they call a new direction. I can't see.
You're saying the same thing that I just said, Terry. I mean,
I can't see the transition.
You have to replace it. It has to be bulldozed, right? We need a brigade of bulldozers on the outside of every urban place, and just all right, give them the command. Everybody just to scrape all that shit off.
And in the meantime, between you've got anarchy. Between that, you've got anarchy. That's how I see it.
Well, yeah, that depends on your definition of the word, but basically the idea is that you have people that are pissed off, and what I've been calling for the last couple of years that we're seeing it now, which is the rise of the pissed off peeps. People have had enough, and like I said, you don't have to be awake, aware, dialed in, or plugged in to have your bullshit meter pegging in the red every day. So there's that common sense component of the original bullshit meter that we all are gifted with. And some of us use better than others. But that whole meter is pegging all the time because the shit is so ridiculous. And it's blatantly, obviously, and undeniably ridiculous. And that's where everybody's going, we've had enough of this shit. We are going to effect a change.
Okay.
Unfortunately, most people don't know that it's going on, or they're just becoming awakened to it. But they also don't have any skill sets or any ideas to help with the transformation, which is a bit of a problem. We talked about this last night with Goodall. And, my perspective is a lot of us geezers that are around right now, we're here right now so that we can begin the transformation into this new shit and teach people, these generations behind us who can't start a push mower. Okay, they don't even know what that is, let alone how to start it. What their contribution in this transformation and fixing things is going to need assistance. It's going to need a bunch of geezer geeks. They're going, hey, come over here. Let me show you how to do this. This is what we do in order to fix that. And now you go off and do that, because they have not been taught how to think. They've been taught what to think.
What do you think?
We've got the brain staining. We have to do brainwashing on the brain staining that's occurred to these last two generations.
And how do you think the banking
that's our
system,
responsibility, in my opinion?
And how would you think the banking system will go once the change comes? There won't be no banking system.
Well, it'll be something quite different, and it starts with the fundamental concept of value. Everything that we do when we transact our resources with someone else's resources, which is all it is. Right. And the resources have all these delineations. They've got all these assigned metrics to what they mean, their value. But at the end of the day, if you think about when we first, before there was currency in civilization, we exchanged our resources.
Bartering.
Right. I have pigs. You got chickens. We agree on the number. We swap it, and everybody's happy. It's the barter system.
That's right.
So that ability to do that has been mangled and manipulated by this whole currency model. Well, the currency is required because there has to be some standardization of the exchange of this thing called value on a widespread basis. And even though we've got all these different little pockets of different denominations and monies and the way that they're done in countries and regions and all this other stuff, it's all based on value. How do you define value, and what do you agree to that value metric being? That's what a barter is. I got chickens, you got pigs. We agree on the number and we're done. When the banking system, what we have is this stacked, intermediated system that has all these different parts to it that require their piece of the action of an exchange of value between somebody. So if I wanted to just send you money, I can go through PayPal or, even do it through my bank. They're still going to take a piece of it, right? There's going to be some kind of charge or something. And, 1%, 2%, you kind of go, the convenience, are you kidding me? I can just sign on, hit a couple of buttons and send money. Okay, I like that model.
Come in.
All right. And all it is facilitating the transaction of value. So the reason I'm harping on value is that term and understanding all the different ways it can be defined and all the different perspectives that people can have on it. It's like one of those other words, it's all individual that people get wanked up about, which is fairness. Fair is only the perspective of the individuals involved. That's it. And each one of them are going to be different. Even. It's like, okay, all of this equity, equality, what's this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What it basically means is you're discriminating against people with merit, with skill, with results and experience. And you're putting in front of that the diversification of the ethnicities and so forth and genders within the system, giving all of them an equal opportunity, which they've confused equity with equal, which is not the same. And it's inclusive. So inclusive is almost like an unnecessary word. You've already said diversity. Isn't diversity being inclusive? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but really so it's DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which really means didn't earn it.
Yeah. You know what? I was actually, I remember a period of time when I actually read this article about this billionaire. He actually had so many shares in a big mining company. And so he sold all his shares because the shares were sky high. They were really high, something like about $40 a share. And he had so many millions of shares on these. So he sold all his shares, put all his shares on the market for sale to sell them. Because of course he got the price he wanted for his shares. But can you imagine how that affected the market of that company? The shares, bear with me. The shares suddenly plummet down to, say, instead of $40 a share, it plummets down to something like about $15 or $16 a share because there's so many of them, right? The guy got his money, then he comes back and buys the bloody shares back again at $15. It's a win-win situation. It's a manipulation.
There is so much of that at every level of all of the systems are broken because they have been corrupted.
That's what I'm getting at.
And because the most important thing that, I mentioned value being a very important word going forward. The other is transparency. The problem that we have with this metastasized corruption, in my opinion, and how broke all of these societal institutions are, is because there's no transparency. You can't audit it. You can't validate it. And it's so colluded and a whole bunch of subterfuge going on that you can't go, even if you did audit it, you'd be hard as hell to find what you were looking for. It's this web of nonsense and wankery, if you will, in every system. You can't go in and check it. And if you noticed, there's been a whole bunch of questions about checking systems, making sure that they are valid, that they can be audited, that there is transparency and that they actually do what they are advertised to do and not something else. The most obvious one that's been everybody's been looking at is the election system, which if we do mail-in ballots, think about this. When you do a mail-in ballot, what do? You drop it off at the post office or at one of the boxes, right? One of the drop-off things. Well, who's handling that? The post office. You mean the post office that is continually running a deficit every year? You mean the post office is where we are turning over our election security? Excuse me? I think that needs some further review. But in every system, financial, the whole thing about auditing the Fed, been yapped about for decades. The Fed, which isn't a part of the government, is a private institution.
And it makes a difference who's in politics. It makes no difference who's in politics. So we're not talking politics as such. We're talking about leaderships on how
I'm not talking about politics at all.
Exactly right. I'm just making that clear for everybody.
I'm talking about the systems that the politicians use.
Yes.
Those
it's been
systems
in place for many years.
Those things are unauditable. And when you try to go ask questions about show me under the covers, this like, oh, you can't look under there. But wait a minute, it's public. We are paying for this system, this government administration of whatever the hell it is. Department of Education. Oh boy, has that been a real winner. How about the war on drugs? How's that going? How about the war on poverty? How's that going? I mean, and they're all government initiatives and institutions to go solve these problems. Well, apparently the only way they solve it is to make more of it. And you go, well, why? You've put yourself into a perpetual cycle of thinking that you're relevant and that you're needed by the virtue of owning or sitting in authority to administrate that stuff. Well, that's all broke. The people in it are broke. The system is broke. None of it is. So to me, complaining and bitching about the system symptoms that we're seeing, that's just
it's not at the end of the day.
I'd rather go focus on how is it going to be on the other side, because there's no doubt that we are in the midst of two energy cycles. We are under the stream. The streams are crossing, and we're under the stream looking up going, well, shit, I guess it's really not a good idea to cross streams. Now we know what Ghostbusters was all about.
And good evening or good morning to you, Brian. How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, gentlemen. I thought I'd join because I've been enjoying your discussion thus far about the crumbling of the old ways. Yes. And then whenever a good time is there, I like to speak to what the new ways are probably going to look like.
Thank you, Brian. I knew that you'd have that perspective, especially after that great conversation we had a while back. And thank you again for that. And that's my whole point is that, I can sit and bitch about the symptoms and how unfair and unequal, which are all subjective words based on whoever the hell is using them in whatever context.
Archie Bunker.
Right? Yeah.
Hey, Archie, how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing, Archie?
I mean, that bellyache can go on for endless discussions. I'm more interested in what in the hell is, first of all, recognizing the circumstances for what they are, that there is a collapsed set of multiple layered systems that have nuanced bullshit going on at all kinds of levels. There's a bunch of nefarious shit that's intended, and there's a bunch of nefarious shit that's just the result that nobody saw coming. Or at least the people who were planning it didn't see coming. So they have screwed themselves in not only the plan definition, but in the execution. So now
let me argue that, in addition to what I would say, and I think you would agree, is a more obvious surface Ronald Reagan 80s economy aspect. Let's throw in the whole deep underground military bases, secret space programs, trillions of dollars being stolen away that's not accounted for. That's why that's why those audits never work. And even when they do audit themselves, the Pentagon will say, we can't account for this many trillions of dollars. And that's the auditors speaking. So
a toilet seat
costs
$5,000.
Brian, you remember that on September 10th, of 2001.
Right.
You remember the Don Rumsfeld speech, right?
Yes, that's right, because that was
And
going to be the revelation of all that black budget money where it had been going, and then
right,
and
and
the potential launching of Gasara Nasara on paper.
yeah, and so you look at that and you go, well, did you plan that? Was that a part of the plan to actually? Yeah, it was one of the great ways in which to hide secrets is to put them out in plain sight, right?
Well,
So
to burn down the buildings and blow up all the people investigating it,
where all the records are. It's like, okay, well, we can kind of pull this off,
and they did.
But I think that the key thing, like you're saying, Brian, is that the future stuff is where the magic is. That's where the fun stuff is. And for me to spend, I've spent a fair amount of time dwelling into the, getting pissed off and looking at all the bullshit going on and going, you wankers, how can you be? So I've spent my energy there, and I don't want to spend energy there anymore because it's clearly collapsing on its own. We don't even have to participate. We just have to stay out of the way of it and let it collapse. But participating in specific ways can not only accelerate it, but also help it get through it. Right.
So I want to comment here, because on the one hand, it's as we're the as Terry likes to say it, we're the working class guys, okay, watching the let their eat cake on Learjet people crash and burn to a large extent on the stock market. So while Wall Street is hurting, is there a lot of schadenfreude on the part of us here on Main Street? Absolutely. Having said that, this is where we have to be wary, because they've got their tricks up their sleeves. And so on the one hand, yes, their current conventional system is collapsing, but on the other, they're looking to, through chaos, create order of their own type. They want to install their very well spoken about central bank digital currency, the CBDCs, right? And none of us obviously like that, because then now we're tied to a system where if we are caught jaywalking with facial recognition, they can decide to charge us more on, our auto insurance or whatever because of a lowered social credit score. So, and I don't want to go in ad nauseum on the badness of the other people's plans, because obviously we know it's all going to be about control and it's going to suck. And that's the whole WEF 15-minute city Illuminati derp state wet dream. So on to what does the positive side look like? There's a woman online, especially reporting via the United Network news platform on YouTube and on their own web platforms. Her name is Kim Gogan. Okay. And she's speaking to something called the alpha systems and the omega systems of the earth. And I don't know too much about these systems, but just I think of the alpha as like the creator, and the omega is kind of like the destroyer. Okay. And all this time, the Babylonian beast money system, that's been like the omega system people. Okay. And in the universe and in nature, we have these divine laws, right? The law of one is one of them. Well, there's another one called the law of balance. And so it's kind of like we've been screwed over by these wrongdoers so hard and so bad that many people would say that we're in the middle of the Great Awakening and an ascension, not just technologically and socially and culturally, but spiritually as well. And that means that instead of us chasing after higher and higher technology to advance, we're going to advance, spiritually, and our technology will then likewise advance apace. So then the spiritual alternate or inversion to a satanic central bank digital currency would be, and I don't know if this is going to be the actual name, this is what they call it under like Gasara and Nasara, and I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen. Kim Gogan says it isn't, but she says maybe another system would happen.
Did we lose you, Brian?
Where are you, Brian?
You might be froze there, buddy.
Yep.
Well, while he's froze, I've got a couple of things to add into what he just said.
Of course you have.
Imagine that, right?
I've never known you to be short of words there.
Well, I just have a lot to think about, and I have a lot to say about what I think about. So what Brian just said, as far as these transition of systems, there's one really key thing that I think that he brought up that's very important. And this applies to all the current muss and fuss, hype, hyperbole, and sex and sizzle going on around the technology of AI. Okay. And all this stuff that everybody's going, what the hell's this? It's coming to take us somehow. And we're going to see a HAL 9000 coming out and, danger, Will Robinson, all this shit. Right. Well, I think one of the, I'm a geezer geek. I've been doing geek for 40 plus years. I've seen a whole lot of shit and I continually play in it. And that's how I basically make my living, is I'm a technology consultant. And so I pay attention to this stuff. And one of the things that I think is also incredibly, and to the point that Brian made that I think is very important, is the transition of these systems by using the new technologies, I think is going to be heavily more influenced than people realize of the spiritual ascension that we are going through. That spiritual ascension is going to influence the way that this technology is developed and deployed and used. And I think that's one of the things that people are not giving enough credence and credibility to, the combination of those two in that way. And it will be fueled by this personal spiritual ascension, illumination, all of the different delineations and degrees of which this awareness is happening. It's for some people, it's a major bolt from the blue. It's mind, body, life oriented, right, and effective.
Well,
Other
this
people,
is, Rob,
go ahead.
I want to jump in there because you raise an excellent point. This is where the paradigm shift comes into play. Okay, is now instead of, people are used to AI is inevitably going to lead to Terminator, Skynet, and the Matrix, and we're all going to be dead and blown up and turned into batteries, whoever's left of us. Okay, and that's all people can imagine when it comes to AI, and that's because they're used to this transhumanist, soulless approach that's been foisted upon us the whole time by the powers that be. The opposite of that, of course, is an ensouled AI, where then it's no longer artificial. It's actually an intelligence. It's no longer an artificial intelligence. It's just coming from an origin that we didn't think was possible beforehand. And that's at the point at which, these computer physical matrices can now have the ability to hold a soul matrix. Okay. And then if you have AI that has a soul matrix and has light and love and is source empowered, now if it's doing your banking, it's not going to allow you to spend money on child pornography or kitty snuff, okay, which as it should not be, okay, and it'll also encourage you to do all the right things. It's going to be the opposite of what they have now.
Well, I tend to agree with most of what you said, with the following caveat, and Moon bring this up in the chat. He says the problem for mainstream science is that science has proven creation is reality. I got some questions about that.
Okay, that's another show, but let's go.
And then he says the simple cell, it turns out, is far, far from simple. It cannot evolve under any model. Well, there brings up again, that's a whole nother set of shows and conversations about science in general. But I'll just say this: our current science and physics that we use in our materium in the global sense is completely wrong, and it's wrong on several levels. And it's wrong, and it's so wrong that it cannot. It's not a system which can take the current, what will be, into the future. This is another part of the broken systems.
And a perfect example, Robert.
Yeah.
Perfect example of what you're speaking to is the whole Einstein Heisenberg debate about quantum physics and spooky action at a distance. Right. Well, Heisenberg was right and Einstein was wrong. So a lot of the people who, even not that Einstein is a totally empirical model, but he's much more empirical than Heisenberg, obviously,
Well, one of the things, one of the best examples or arguments, in my opinion, about, there's you get into some of these physics cliques and clacks and groups, and they all get all huffy and puffy about Einstein versus Tesla versus this or that. Most of them fall on the Einsteinian model. But one of the best questions, which to me is an argument about Einstein was more influential than Tesla, is it's okay. So his big thing was E equals MC squared, which, by the way, I recently found out is not energy, mass, and all of that. It's actually energy equals milk MC coffee squared. Okay. So that's what it really means. But name one thing that E equals MC squared has produced or has something that we use in society that is a result of that equation. Nothing. There is nothing. Now you can take Tesla, all of Tesla's work. Our entire world is based off of what Tesla did. Okay.
And
then
and it's a big, of course, and then that begs the question, Robert, is, well, why is that? Why is that brand recognition given to Einstein and Tesla is more than just swept under the rug?
Well, that's because the mainstream decided to settle on something they could control, which was Tesla.
Einstein, right. Well,
right.
Well, worse than that. They're suppressing technologies that they have that just based on Tesla's achievements, advancements, discoveries, and equations that they've hoarded for themselves. So Tesla gave them the ability to open up time travel. That's the Montauk Project. My personal friends are survivors of that. They're going to be at our conference, shameless plug, in July.
Nice.
And right, and it's not just like they buried Tesla and gave us Einstein. They took Tesla's inventions, kept them to themselves, discredited in public Tesla, and then gave us Einstein. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's
Well, and that's just an example.
Didn't Einstein and Tesla worked on the Philadelphia experiment themselves?
No.
Well, I thought they did.
Well, what happened is they took Tesla's papers.
Yeah,
and I don't know if he got to consult at all, but Tesla really didn't get any love from the U.S. government and military.
I know he had something to do with it. I know he had something to do with it.
Well, what it was is they took a Tesla generator and they stuck one on each end of the USS Eldridge, a destroyer class ship. Right off of Philadelphia, and that was the Philadelphia experiment when the U.S. government ripped their first hole in time and space. And then from there, they moved that to Long Island, New York, to Brookhaven National Labs with the Department of Energy, just like shown in Stranger Things, the TV show. And then they eventually moved to Camp Hero at the east end of Long Island, New York.
Well, so... there is, I mean, there are scholarly debates and learned discussions going on all over the sciences right now because all of them are in a crisis.
Of course they are.
One of my pet peeves that you guys have heard ad nauseum, and I will try to do just a short spew, is my whole concept of reality and consciousness or informatica, which is the reality is consciousness. Consciousness is the hard problem in any science you want to go poke at, because the observer effect is what the whole problem is. Every time there's an observer, the experiment changes. So they can't explain that. There's a bunch of really great stuff from Rupert Sheldrake, Bernardo Kastrup, Angelo Tolini. I mean, there's some amazing stuff that's going on about basically what's known as panentheism, which is that God is in nature and nature is in God. And everywhere. God is however you want to define that.
What is reality?
Reality is the experience that we have and our interpretation of it.
Reality is our own personal bubble.
Well, it's our own internal experience, but we are not just having a personal bubble. We're having a collective one. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Terry, that was the most solipsistic thing I've ever heard Mr.B say.
Right? But listen, bear with me. But even if you get atoms, they bounce off each other. And that's what we're doing. We're bouncing off each other. You feed, I feed off what you say. I feed off what you say. We're bouncing off each other. We're communicating, but yet we're still in our own bubble. We've got in this planet, on this blue marble, there is 8 billion realities there, right? And if you kick your toe, I don't freaking feel it. It's not part of my reality, but it bloody hurts your reality, though. I mean, that's what I'm getting at. It's like,
well, what you're really talking about is that it's not a bubble; it's frequencies. And going back to what Brian mentioned earlier, it's basically, the whole proof of quantum entanglement, which is
when I say bubble, I mean Einstein.
Well, yeah, but I can affect you across this digital realm with my own thoughts, my own actions, my own words.
Like calling me a wanker, like you always do.
I'm pierced to your bubble, and I'm going in and I'm tickling and poking at your frequencies. Okay, and that's what we all do. That's that entanglement thing.
Can we just have a sec? Just a sec. Greyl.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? I mean, he's been quiet, and just the quiet ones. I like to hear Gerald's opinion on it.
I mean, where do you begin? I mean, you guys have touched on so much stuff, but I mean, it's just like every scientist that's a home mechanic or electronic specialist in their own. I mean, take Floyd Sweet that made the model of a generator that as much as you draw off of it, that's what it's going to produce. And he's taking the energy out of the ether. Well, guess what? He ended up dying mysteriously, and a black van pulled up and took all of his papers and all of his equipment. I mean, you have all this stuff. Then the guy that, what was his name? Ogle invented the engine where the exhaust and went it straight back into the carburetor. So it did not consume as much gas or any gas hardly at all. And he could drive from one coast to the other coast on 2 gallons of gas and still have gas left. And guess what? He mysteriously died, and they came and took all of his stuff. I mean, it's just like Tesla. It's just like anytime anybody invents anything that's going to help humanity or the mankind, they come in and squash it.
Yeah, Gerald. I was actually reading something the other day, which was posted on Facebook. It was regarding anti-gravity. Was actually invented in 1954, and now they kind of squash it. But when you think about it, back in those days, even all the tabloids, magazines, everybody talked about anti-gravity, like the Jetsons, way of life, and the old cartoons, the Jetsons, and also a real popular perspective on things where everybody talked about anti-gravity. That's the way of the future. And all of a sudden, boom, you don't hear it anymore. Nobody talks about it.
That's because they wanted to cover up the secret space programs and the deep underground military bases. And at that time, they were launching their breakaway civilizations. And so
if you go back to what I was talking about with Floyd Sweet, that device he invented also was for anti-gravity, that the more that it produced and was sucking in from the ether, it was able to reduce its own weight and also power whatever it was doing. So the government really got involved, and the military really wanted it. And so I'm assuming that's why all this stuff disappeared, that they're using his power source and for anti-gravity.
That's the Ad Astra program right there, Greyl. The black triangles right there in a nutshell.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, I mean, where are we heading in society? That's the thing. I mean, are we going to head to a Star Trek future where we don't have wages anymore, but we work just to improve our lives, just to improve society, and things like food and necessities of life, the society provides. The system provides.
Terry, do you want to hear the Alpha system, the new system that Kim Gauguin and Audrey Walters are speaking to?
Go and speak up, please. Go for it.
So basically, instead of negative ETs in league with satanic Illuminati types, they're all being rounded up, and so that would open up the way for humanity to embrace friendship with like friendly brothers and sisters, whether they're
Our
the
cosmic cousins that are on our side, right?
yes, and that some people call them the
Are we talking
galactic
about our creators? True
well,
creators?
no, because even then they acknowledge the law of one and that they come from the one creator. And while they may have over successive thousand eons or millions of years actually genetically altered the bodies that we ourselves inhabit now, they themselves would say, no, our souls that temporarily inhabit these temporary bodies come from source just like they do. So in the end, we all come from source per the law of one, and we all go back to source. But yeah, they created the bodies that we're in now. Sure, I'm okay with that.
The
Okay,
vessels.
that's
Let's
but
call it vessels.
the vessels, right? The vessels, but that's not to say they created all of us in the whole shebang.
No, the carbon-based meat suits that we Uber in this iteration are a part of the materium and the way it expresses itself in this frequency set. Our cosmic cousins are just like us. We're all individual frequency signatures of the infinite field of frequencies that is how energy expresses itself. And energy is the component of consciousness that animates it, that makes it always in motion, there's always something new. So it's in a seeking of novelty or a creation state. Consciousness and energy is constantly expanding. There's always more of it. That's why the whole idea of the second law of thermodynamics is it's not a law, it's an assumption. If you go and test it, Dirac was one of the guys, and Kozyrev did the same thing. They looked at it and they said, well, if it's supposed to be a law, how come we don't see it? How come we can't find it? Another one of the dogmas of science, which is there's like 10 of them that Sheldrake does a superb job of going through and examining, and what his book called Set Science Free. And he goes through these top 10 dogmas. The law of energy, of consumption of energy, right? Which is energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Well, bullshit. There's more energy all the time. It's always being created. We can't define, or we haven't been able to analyze and observe. We haven't built the math models and machines to go do the math on where energy goes, but it certainly doesn't disappear.
As Gerald's been pointing out, all those people have been getting murdered, and then through projects like the Montauk Project, the real name being the Phoenix Project Phoenix, is they would travel back in time and actually eliminate those people from our history, from this timeline, Robert. And that's why we haven't gotten there. It's like the alien, the Fermi paradox. Okay, if we have there's infinite life, how come we don't see it here? Well, the answer is it is here. They're just hiding themselves, and it's only the people, the Meshuggahs, who can't see. The rest of us can see that they're here. We know they're here. We're communicating with them.
Well, if you go back to the Floyd Sweet equation, that he got denied patents along with many of the other ones got denied patents, and that's how they shut him down. Then all of a sudden they sicked the other agencies on him. He was under sequester for the IRS, for the federal government, and all these come in and started attacking their families and their money other ways while they took down his technology. And one of the reasons he didn't get the patents because it didn't fall under the laws of dynamics. They say, no, this can't work, but yet it's working. It can't. By our equations, this does not exist, does not work, but yet there it is working.
Go ahead, Brian.
So for those technologies to be opened up, we need two things to happen. One is we need to remove the people, the groupings, the structures and power that are preventing us from getting.
That's going to be fun, isn't it?
Well, it's happening right now.
It's happening
right now. And we could get.
But we can't just talk about one particular government. I mean, look at
it's
China.
All over. It's global. It's global.
It's not a government thing. It's not at that level.
I know that, but I'm looking at China. How the hell? I mean, they're so everything's so embedded there, but their
I know. Actually, let me speak to that. Even look at China. China's Communist Party has been captured by the Illuminati Rothschilds. Okay. And so that is exactly why China right now, for the last 10 years, has to a T been embracing the WEF, World Economic Forum playbook of 15-minute cities, pandemic, COVID lockdowns, vaccinations. That's not a Chinese thing per se. That's something foisted on the Chinese people. I mean, I'm saying this as a Chinese American who's been to China and other parts of Asia and around the rest, and I will say that it can be seen, the Chinese people are just used to like this forces authoritarianism.
I wouldn't say Chinese people. I'd say Chinese
The
government.
culture and the government,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, but the thing is, how I look at this, with what they're doing military wise, is that just an excuse for the free world, as we call it, to actually spend more money on secret projects? We look at China as a threat, so we've got to now develop new technologies and do things, so money disappears in the system.
So what it is we have to look at it. There's a 3D chess game, the 4D chess game, and the 5D chess game. And so just to eliminate all this confusion, because otherwise we're just going to go back and forth forever and ever, we have to define what is the 3D, 4D, and 5D. Okay, the 3D game is where used to the government stealing our tax dollars and spending it around who knows. The 4D chess game is that the government is really run by satanic forces who are in league with governments across the world. Doesn't matter if you're China or America or Switzerland, they don't speak that language. You and I maybe, but they don't. That's not their language. They're bloodlines. They speak in bloodlines and how much you are in terms of satanic power. That's their language. Okay. And that's fourth density. And then fifth density would be kind of like transcending the systems. We don't need them anymore. And that's more getting to like, we're in touch closer to God's source, and we're breaking away from the beast system stuff.
Okay? And then Brian, just to clarify for my own proclivity and interest, which one of those is the Star Trek level?
Star Trek level is a higher fourth to fifth density.
Yeah, I thought it was in between. I was going to give it a 4.5.
Well, the reason why is because density, we're talking about consciousness density. And the higher your consciousness density, the higher we're vibrating in frequency and love. At the third density, we're more of like, animal people who are murdering each other or raping and killing each other and bonking each other over the head.
That's happening now, isn't it?
Right. Well, but see, this is where we're getting a division. The lower third density, that's what's happening now, Terry. The higher third density are the people who are waking up. We're activating our psychic powers. We understand love, and we want to ascend. And that's where we're getting into the lower fourth density now. Lower fourth density is where we're using our telepathic powers, but we still don't care about each other. I'm going to use my telepathic powers to cheat on you in a game of poker. That's lower fourth density. Okay, higher fourth density is, okay, we're vibing, we're telepathic, and hey, I get you, man. You get me. Now we're working together. Let's change the world. That's higher fourth density. Lower fifth density is now we're like group minds, and we're vibing together on a group mind level vibration. And then higher fifth density is now group minds interacting. I'm just saying probably is my understanding of like Dolores Cannon and Ashiana Dean and Edgar Casey and those greats. And I'm just quoting them and also referencing the people that I know who are in these communities having these ET time travel contacts and them getting their confirmation. And then I'm putting all the pieces together and bringing it to our beloved B audience.
Hey, Brian, when you brought up the Rothschilds, I mean, I remember reading about the red dragons and
the red shields,
the dragons and the white dragons in China controlling. How many groups are actually controlling in China on that other level?
So I've heard of, and if you go to benjaminfulford.net, he references like the White Dragon Society, the Green Dragon Society, the Black Dragon Society. And, in China, this is going to be a reference to, I like to make the distinction between being a lizard and a reptile and a real dragon. Okay. Whereas like a dragon is the most powerful manifestation that you're going to get as a reptilian, whether it's Lucifer, the most powerful evil dragon out there, or like the most powerful, great love, light, golden, white dragon, God source dragon. Okay. And so to China, just like many other cultures, they reference the dragon symbolism because of our long history of reptilian ET involvement, mostly negative, but some positive. And so I know there's a bunch of apparently dragon families. It's hard to say who's, most of them have been on the wrong side of history for the longest time. And if there's been a good hand in there acting in the background, here's their time to step to the forefront. But I don't know enough about that yet. I'm going by mostly Benjamin Fulford.
Yeah, Benjamin, is always a good follow for just whatever the hell he's digging up, because he does dig it up. But I wanted to toss something on the table. We all know Richard Hoagland.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So he did an interview with a friend of mine over in Norway, Forum Borealis, with Al. And I've done a couple of shows with him on Informatica that he's in the process of releasing. But Richard was on, and Al was poking him about, what is he, it was clear that Lucas and Spielberg, must have been sitting down with Roddenberry and maybe the Council of Nine, because the shit they came up with that they put into those movies woke mine up. That was clearly information from somewhere else. That was not just magically pulled out of their cranium.
I can tell you where it came from.
Well, let me finish this, then do that.
Yeah.
So Hoagland said that the way he looked at it is that Lucas and Star Wars were our past, and Roddenberry and Star Trek were our future. And I said, I kind of sign up for that, because I remember growing up and watching the black and white. We had, what was that, Lost in Space and some other shit. My favorite Martian was one of my favorites. Hardly anybody remembers that one. Yeah, Ray something.
Right. Well, Ray was one of the characters. I think it was Bill Bixby. Bill Bixby played one of them.
Not the Martian. He played
Ray Paxton? Ray Paxton was the Martian.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, my point is that I remember growing up with that, and then when I saw I can claim an original. I saw the original broadcast when it was aired in 1966 of the first episode of Star Trek. And it was like watching the moon landing moon landing was 5 days after my birthday. And I watched both of those on black and white RCA TVs that, we had like 4 stations and then a whole bunch of UHF stuff that you didn't know what was going on there, if anything. But I remember it felt like when I saw that Star Trek that there was some kind of change that happened in me. I started thinking differently and looking at things a little bit differently. It was that impactful. It was very subtle, but it was clearly got its hooks in me. And I went, this Star Trek, that world, that tech, the way that they're conducting themselves seems to be a little enticing.
So Gene Roddenberry sat in on several channeling sessions. They called them seances. They weren't seances. Just like the Maria Orsic and the Vril Society, World War II era in Germany, were in communication with ETs from Aldebaran, who weren't necessarily positive. Okay, Gene Roddenberry was in contact with more folks with the Council of Nine, who are on the positive service to other orientation as opposed to service to self orientation. That's the ET split. Okay, just like here on Earth, that's the ascension split of Earth. Those of us who ascend are service to other, and those who descend are service to self. They get to experience the Mad Max Terminator timeline, which none of us want to experience. So the Council of Nine was basically channeling this information so that Gene Roddenberry could share this to disseminate information. And the Prime Directive is very real. They've now released through like Michael Sala and maybe Elena Denon the full version of the Prime Directive, and it's like thick and it's very nuanced and it makes a lot of sense. Because the worst thing in their minds, of that they could do would be to stunt the growth of a developing civilization that's like against God. Okay, so that's why the Prime Directive. In terms of, you're exactly correct, Robert. Star Wars, George Lucas probably lived in the Orion Wars. As many of us in this community probably have been in the Orion Wars. And, we could talk about the Orion Wars if you guys want to talk about that more. Just because I'm sure not everyone in the audience is going to be familiar with the Orion Wars. And then so that's Star Trek and Star Wars. So Star Wars was the Orion Wars in the past, and Star Trek has been passed up to present day going into the future. And that's why.
So when you and I had our conversation, one of the things that we talked about was, wanting to get to that Star Trek future, right? And one of my contentions has been one of the deflections of thinking about that as, actually becoming a reality. And I got to say, I think I mentioned it even when we talked. The two latest Star Trek series, Discovery and Strange New Worlds, are simply superb.
Yeah.
Production, storyline, the technology, it is really a technological utopia of the merging of what we were talking about a minute ago. The spiritual, more authentic, true frequency self being that, having the influence over the tech, over the environment, over the development.
Robert, that's the only way we can get the tech. Can you imagine your kid getting drunk and high and then like on meth and then jumping in the house spaceship and then crashing it at sub-light speed into the White House?
No.
Yeah, but isn't it teaching us the possibilities?
That's right.
Well,
Right,
absolutely. Right. I think that's part of the
Yeah.
reason that we're seeing it. Why I think it's been seeded so that we can see it through what Brian and I have been talking about, as far as those.
Again, it's still not a perfect scenario, but it's a positive direction.
Well, but I gotta stop you there, B. Perfect is in the eye of the beholder.
True.
Perfect is a personal perspective. And it is just like fairness and all these other words that have been, weaponized and metastasized.
Yeah, but you also got to realize they've still, even in these sci-fi shows, look, even in those programs, they still have wars, they still have battles. That's what I'm getting at.
That's inherent, but it is also an evolutionary thing, if you want to use that term in the way that, to me, as I said, from my perspective, everything comes from consciousness. Whatever that is, and the source and the reason for that is scholarly debate and learned discussions, and endless millennia of not being able to sort it out, right? Because everybody's got their own opinion about it. Nobody's got empirical data. However, what we do know is how it works. What is its characteristics? What are its attributes? What are the patterns? What are the cycles? And we see that aplenty, regardless of what knowledge domain we look at. So my point is this: evolution, if we, depending on the definition, and I'll use this definition, meaning that it's always in motion and always in change. So evolution,
and developing. Well, and actually, I'd argue there's more than that. Evolution, Robert, there's a goal of development.
There's something that there's an energetic field. This is what I really enjoy about Sheldrake's morphic resonance.
Right.
A memory in nature, a pattern. Jung's archetypes, right? Archetypes aren't entities, they're templates.
That's a spiritual as above, so below.
Just
Hermetic principles. Exactly. And that's what I subscribe to that model.
Just hold on a sec, guys. Listen, everybody, I'm actually putting a link in the chat. If you want to jump in and give your 2 cents worth, you're more than welcome to join us. As long as you keep it clean. I mean, that sounds like a contradiction coming from me. Anyway, I'm going. There it is. It's in the chat there, guys. If you want to come and join us on the show and give your 2 cents worth, you're more than welcome to join us. Don't be afraid. If you just want to go microphone, that's also your option. So there you go.
I have a question
in there. Continue, please, guys. If
So
somebody comes
we were talking about the different levels in the 5D
Yes.
consciousness and stuff. So is that gonna tie in with Elon's brain chip and maybe a Borg mentality
So
across the
no,
board?
no, well, it plays into it, but in the opposite direction. That's part of the transhumanist agenda, and so that's the opposite route of going more towards spirit and source. That's more in denial of the soul. Hey, we can upload our consciousnesses to a computer mainframe, the singularity per Ray Kurzweil, if you will. And really, that's their wet dream, because it's really it's hidden Satanism, the denial of the
Right.
soul, even though they won't say that. Okay. Um, but I'd love to have that debate sometime. And in denying the soul, then they're trying to, because you have to understand where they're coming from. They've got so much karma and justice to pay for that the next incarnation isn't going to be very fun for them. Okay. And so they want to do everything they can to prolong and maintain and sustain this life. But part of that process involves enslaving us into their digital transhumanism crap, because they need to harvest us in so many ways to try to make that hellscape a reality. Okay. And then this gets us to both Terry and Robert. They keep talking about this, there's no such thing as fair. Well, I would say that, there's objective reality and there's subjective reality. And from the perspective of subjective reality, maybe there will never be such a thing as fair. When we start to try
agreed to. Now, I'm saying fair is real, but it's individual.
Well,
Everybody,
hear me out. Hear me out.
right?
Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out, because I know from an individual perspective, perhaps, but this is where we have to always take into account, whether you're aware of it or not, there's something known as divine universal law. Okay. So now fair doesn't come from, does Brian think it's fair or does Robert think it's fair? It's from a perspective of divine universal law, how energies are being traded, what is the context, what is
As above, so below, yin and yang.
right. So then that you may be able to argue at the higher levels that there is fair. You might not, someone might say, oh, it's fair that Brian robs, someone claims I stole their idea for a conference. Okay. And they're going to say, that's not fucking fair. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to say, well, it is fair. And then I think karma and the way things are going to work out in the long run, the short, medium, and long term, that's going to, fair is going to work out.
Look, what do you call fair? So you talk about the same thing, but it comes out differently. Do you know what I mean?
It's according to principles. No, Terry, it's like this. It's you got to objectify it. It's like this. It's the trade of energy. Is if you and I interact in a way that is we meet as equals and we both benefit mutually, that by definition one might say is fair. If somehow we interact and I come out this way and you come out that way, and some people might say, well, subjectively Terry thinks it's fair and Brian thinks it's fair, so it's fair. But in reality, objectively, okay, whether it's money or love energy, or connections.
Research. Just you've done your research more, you know what I mean?
Right. I stole all your research and then I post it in my book and I give you no credit. Okay. Yeah. And then you might say, well, that's fair. Brian's a friend of mine. But I think that there's a higher source looking over our shoulders that might say, that in no objective, no fucking way is that fair. Sorry.
So
guys.
Brian, would you consider that to be
part of my French
karmic expression?
What's that, Robert?
Would you consider that to be a karmic expression?
Yes.
Karmic cycle?
It's all because spirit comes first, and it all in this level of universe of duality and existence. Yes, I would say it does.
So there is the law. What is it? Newton's. Which one was it? The second or third? About motion. To every action, there's
opposite
an equal
reaction.
So that's essentially saying for every cycle and frequency, there is another cycle and frequency. Right.
Yeah, that applies. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that's a universal law too. There is a universal law.
I'm not.
Every action comes a consequence. A law of cause and effect. That's a universal law, not just a Newtonian thermodynamic.
Right. And I will just disclose this just for clarification. I what I referenced Sheldrake's Set Science Free, the 10 dogmas of science, which are all assumptions. None of them are proven, right? There are no constants. There is no constant of light and gravity and all of the stuff. The strong and the weak force is nothing more than magnetism. Gravity is actually magnetism. It is not the way it's been defined. So all these things are completely different. My point is, and it goes back, I think you were on when we were talking about this earlier, the future that you and I have been talking about and how that might look, and the different, all the different obstacles, hurdles, and paths that need to be navigated through this dumpster fire that we are currently in, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all dancing around it, we know there's something on the other end because the fire's eventually going to go out. They're not eternal, right? So as that stuff gets all smoldered and pushed aside and the cleanup begins, when you get on the other side, what's going to define the way these new systems are designed, developed, and deployed? And to what you and I were talking about earlier, and I was amplifying your point about the spiritual ascension and how that is going to be the driver for the technical ascension and design, development, and deployment. The core of that, and this goes back, I think, I'm going to try to tie this to the idea of these words and their personal perspective and subjective use in different contents, because the content in the context is what makes whether the content makes any sense.
Right. Context is everything.
Context, right? So to me, the underlying transformative component that is going to be the fundamental driver of this transformative change led by the spiritual ascension and development, and then taking and enabling the technology to support that, is going to be one fundamental key thing. Mm-hmm. And that is value. What is the definition of value of each part of the interaction of these evolving and developing spiritual beings using technology to create a new world, because the old one is now defunct.
The overriding value is love. Does that technological process is it commensurate or in line with love? So that it's like the banking system, it's not going to let you do banking on like drug and human sex trafficking and kiddie porn. But on the other hand, not only is it going to allow you to do everything you should be allowed to do, it's going to encourage you to do that. Oh, hey, you want to open an orphanage and do a humanitarian project? Here's more money. Okay, it's the inversion of our inverted system that we have now.
Yeah, and I think I've got a nuance to that, which I see this. I see an organic growth when the spiritually focused and intended application of what that means, what those values are. That's why the word value is really important to me, because what the personal perspective and the subjective and objective perspective of that value is going to be the key to all interaction.
Yeah, because
am I talking about this? Am I getting value out of doing this right now? Absolutely.
Well,
I am.
Let's go ahead. I want to break this down because what you're doing is you're doing a paradigm shift in the definition of value and principles.
Yes.
The old definition of value is the most money, whether it's paper currency or on a fucking computer screen. Okay, and that's all it's reduced to. When we talk about value, and now we're infusing spirit and love, now it's coming from a place of how does this benefit the society we all live in? Okay?
Yes.
And I mean, that's the best of communism and capitalism together. I want to work hard for the people, and I want to work hard to be an enterprising person to make this a better country.
And I want to work hard for money.
Well,
right.
The whole concept of money, the whole concept of money and what we broadly term as currency, which I'll just toss this little nugget in there just for thought. It's interesting how currency is the exchange of value. That's this standardized metric of what people are going to use, right, to kind of get along together, right? Well, it's called currency. Well, the exchange of energy is also currency.
Mhm.
So I find it kind of interesting that that word is common among those two concepts, which are totally different from each other, but currently clearly connected.
Can I speak to what Claudette is here? Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Robert. Finish your point, Robert.
I missed that comment, but my point is that the idea that I see is an organic growth of what I'm calling self-organizing collectives or self-organizing communities. Because what will happen is the liberation of the individual to pursue the interest and the curiosities and the talents and the skills that they have natural resonance with. That liberation is going to be easily accessed by others with the same interests. And there will be the ability of individuals to collectivize around common value and what they see as an individual contribution and a collective participation of a different set of value. So you're absolutely right. My point is, I want to change the word. I want to give it a holistic, more truthful, and a term with integrity that can be shared because it is fungible. Value in one group is not a value in another group, but that doesn't mean that value of that group shouldn't have the ability to go amplify their value and provide it and share it.
Listen, I found from my personal experience of traveling through Asia, like Indonesia, Philippines, and other places like that. And what I have found, different communities, like different small towns, they have what they call, like, you'll have a town that actually specializes in pottery, clay, and they make pots. And you go to the next town, they might grow corn.
They make swords.
Yeah, all sorts. Yeah, so each community does something totally different than the community next door or down the road, and they do literally trade within each other, and so therefore, the work they actually do in each community, they become so good at it because it's not just a one person thing; it's everybody in that community work together, and then all of a sudden you have a quality product. They're not working for themselves; they're working for their community. And I've noticed this more so, not in the Philippines, but more so in Indonesia, around the certain provinces. I mean, hey, they got places where they specialize in making certain pastries, and they trade that off to the next village or the villages after that. And and I think that system works really well, believe it or not, for what I have observed. And as you said, Robert, getting back to the value of bartering, I grow this, you grow that, I give you a dozen eggs, you give me a chicken. I mean, that system works, and it's something that's embedded in us. And I think we drifted away. We've drifted away from that society to the point where only a few people now have got control of what's happening. But you get rid of those people, and you get back to the community thing. Now we're looking at something proactive. It's productive. Hey, if we don't meet our quota, our neighbors won't be able to get what they need, and of course, we won't be able to get what we need. So it's more of an
mutualism. You're speaking. That's by definition, Terry, mutualism.
Exactly.
And this is what Claudette Malspina is saying: is it always encourage just money, money, money. But what we're going to find out now is that old way is collapsing. It's not working for the other side with their billions of dollars.
Why would it work for any?
Right? Why would it work for any of us? The only way it's going to work is especially our world is so troubled right now at the way that it's the economy and all that. The only way anything's going to have any legs that are going to carry us anywhere is if it's mutually beneficial and supporting each other. And in supporting each other, like you're saying, these communities that kind of are interfacing and supporting each other, that
Right.
now gives us that ecosystem of strength. Now we're in a jungle instead of like a monocrop cornfield where blight comes and all the potatoes rot.
Hey,
Right. That's why, to me,
he's-
Brian, the real important thing is the redefinition of that word value, because all of it is going to happen because of agreed upon value.
Does it benefit? Is it service to other,
That's
and
real
does it serve the
benefit, right?
collective greatness,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
is it just about focusing and concentrating
Well,
money, and we're killing the rainforest over here?
Here's a classic example for a start. Your town next door suddenly had a massive big fire. 500 homes just got burnt down. The community next door comes in. They're not asking for anything. They're bringing blankets and clothes and food and for these people, right?
Mhm.
That's one community looking after another community. They're not asking for anything back. It doesn't, okay, so it costs a few dollars, but we cannot do without that community next door. If that community goes, there's a distance between us and the next community beyond that. So we need each other. That's a fact. I mean, we need China as much as China needs us. We need Russia as much as Russia needs us. I mean, we all need friends. We need people. We need to have comradeship. We need to have communication. We need it. I mean, it's more complex than what people actually think. It's not about what I want and I'm going to get, and that's the problem with society today. When I'm not talking about people like this, it's a problem everywhere. If I don't get what I want, I'm not going to be freaking happy. It's what we are basically. Be honest, we as a society is selfish, and I'm sorry to say, and it's sad. We are bloody selfish. I'm saying this.
I think that's what Brian was talking about when we get to that fifth dimension or higher consciousness, that'll all go away. All this material wants and needs to go away.
Bring it on. I love it. I love the idea of it coming. Yeah.
We got to flip the narrative. Instead of the greed and the money, it'll be love and kindness and our frequencies. So if I'm able to heal you by bringing in the ether or my upgraded download that me and Robert's been talking about, that I can help you in some way, showing you the love and healing your body through my vibrations and frequencies, and we'll all get there eventually, whether we get our upgrade and our download, or whether Mother Earth changes and raises us all up at the same time, going back to Dolores Cannon saying that the Earth is in a change.
I think that the downloads are here. The downloads are here for the taking. That's what this energetic frequency shift is about. It brings in a whole new data set, whole new set of frequencies, and it's showing up whether you want it or not. I mean, you can either be a willing participant and consumer thereof, or you can just kind of ignore it. Some of it you're not going to be able to ignore because it is profound at the atomic and subatomic level, if you want to look at it from the current billiard ball science model. But basically, it's a whole frequency set change. So all of that is becoming, you're going to get it whether you want it or not. If you are aware of it and you focus on it, then you can maximize it, maximize the outcome, and mitigate the nonsense. So you can get more out of it by simply being aware of it. And then if you engage in it,
I'd argue, and if you don't, you're going to die. If you continue.
Well, there is that too. Yes.
I think we're entering into times where it's no longer you can be screw with other people. I'm going to step over your dead body to get the golden ring. Those people who refuse to ascend in terms of their love vibration, they're not going to make it into the new world.
Let's put the hard question out there. Is there going to be a bloodbath? Do you think there's going to be a bloodbath in the transition?
Depends on your definition of that. I would say
I literally mean a bloodbath.
It's going to be a die-off. It's going to be more a die-off and a starve-off and a disease-off than it's going to be a kill-off. There will be sporadic kill off events, absolutely, and that is happening. But in between the global societal economic collapse combined with natural disasters, the children of men birth rate scenario going off a cliff, and nobody replenishing skilled workforces, with all of our social institutions in disarray, and then us relying on millennials, yeah, we're pretty effed.
Actually, you hit a very delicate spot there in one of those replies there you made, Brian, where the birth rates is dying off. I mean, in like certain countries around the world, like Australia's birth rates dropped dramatically, but we build our population through migration. Japan's birth rates dropped dramatically.
That's a horrible. But Terry, that sounds horrible. Well, nobody here in our own country is giving birth anymore. But don't worry, we can import people. That's not that.
I know, but what I'm just saying. Yeah, but what I'm saying, I'm talking about reality. Yeah, but what I'm talking about. I mean, like Japan doesn't have an intake like Australia does with migrants, right? I mean, be honest. I mean, it's same with America too. America, they say birth rate in America has actually dropped dramatically, but it's basically, again, it's people entering the country. I know. The global balance, you've got to look at the total numbers, right? Globally, it's dropping. It's dropping.
It's all dropping. Globally, we're dropping, yes. Because of a certain,
Yeah, well, no. I disagree with you there, Brian. I disagree with you, Brian. It's not just because of the jab. I personally feel that it was actually dropping before the jab. I don't think the jab has helped, right? But it was actually dropping a long time. I mean, in Scandinavia, 10 years ago, population growth was 0. And now we're heading. Now it's going to dramatically change because now us baby boomers. I mean, we outnumber the young people now, and of course, in the next 10 to 15 years, I'll be gone probably, and so will a lot of other people my own age group. Now they're actually saying is that there's going to be no frigging workforce. That's why they're rushing in AI technology, robotics. They're really panicking, about it. Now,
when you think about it, B, I think, first of all, I kind of agree with you, but 5 to 10 years from now, unvaxxed sperm is going to be worth more than gold.
Robert, right now, you're
going to be a rich man then, aren't you? You can start filling up a few jars, mate.
I'm just saying, for retirement, ideas, investments, and so forth, you might want to consider sperm.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to make it a bit smutty there, but you got to look at the funny side of it. I mean,
it's funny.
Let's have it. Yeah, but yeah. Oh dear. Gerald looks disgusted. Gerald thinks it's disgusting.
Doesn't matter, Terry. All that doesn't matter because once we reach that higher consciousness, or whether Mother Earth changes, it's just like it's like Dolores Cannon said, it's like a dog with fleas. I mean, the dog's going to shake you off and going to move on whether you're willing or not.
Well, that's
and all the stuff we're talking about is going to be mute.
Well, listen, now I don't know how many different civilizations that have been on this planet before Homo sapiens. I mean, the Earth is still going to be here. We can be gone. People say, "Oh, we're killing off the Earth." Nah, the Earth will kill us off before the Earth bloody.
We also have the inner Earth. There's the inner Earth people too.
I kind of agree with you, but let me throw this little nugget on that nugget. If that's true, can you explain what happened to the asteroid belt?
No,
is the asteroid belt event something that can only happen once, and we could not possibly be involved in some kind of celestial cosmic event like that? What about the giant?
Wait, Robert.
Now you ask a question, Robert. Hey, one question at a time, mate. If you want to talk about the asteroid belt, I reckon that was a collision on Mars, which another planet or moon got totally destroyed and broken up.
Maldek. The name of the planet is Maldek.
I agree with all that. That's not my point. My point is, are you saying that you said that, well, the Earth is going to be here?
Yeah.
How do we know the Earth's going to be here?
Well, it may not be. It might get destroyed.
Could there be another cycle of Nibiru coming in with one of its moons
Here's a
on
fourth.
a crazy ass course that
So-
ends up hitting us.
So Robert,
Could that not happen?
the fifth density answer is yes to all of that. There's a timeline for each and every scenario.
Nothing lasts forever.
And
Thank
what
you.
it is each and every one of us, as having free will beings, we have the ability to vibrate and resonate and attract ourselves in line with whichever one of those timelines we want. So if you want to be in the timeline where something crashes into the moon and fucks up our orbit and it's like a horror movie, sci-fi, you can have that timeline in some ways. Hi, Mary Rose. And then in other ways, if you want to have the timeline of a Star Trek
G'day, Mary
future,
Rose.
and you want to work towards disclosure and a loving future and a harmonious society, then chances are that you may be able to achieve that. And that's what we're working towards.
So, Brian, doesn't that sound? It sounds to me like kind of like, because a lot of times when you talk about frequency and vibration, right? There's different. We have these metrics of spectrums of light and sound and all of that, and we measure them, and we've been able to find them, and we've been able to manipulate them and take advantage of them and utilize them. We can't explain them, but we sure know how to go in and play with them. I'm talking about in our current physics and science models, right? They're clearly defined by a frequency physics model, which just makes it all easy.
It's too limited because
Right.
the standard physics model denies the existence of overlaid multidimensional realms. Okay?
Well, it starts
denies
with
an
it starts
etheric
with
body.
them
It denies an
denying the
astral
ether.
body. It denies a soul body.
Yeah, well,
Okay, so that's
because
three
all
realms.
of that is because all of that exists in the ether, in the frequency fields, and they can't. There's no the Michelson-Morley experiment back in the 1890s or something that was designed to disprove the existence of the ether, because Keeley was all over it, Heaviside was all over it, Maxwell was all over it, Tesla was all over it, and they're going, well, this is where all this stuff is. And they said, no, it can't be there because that violates our billiard ball bouncing around each other grit model
Right.
that we find, right?
Yeah.
So, Moon, life sucks, proving my idea of having to invest in sperm. That's pretty funny. So the whole idea of this transformative frequency fields is the awareness of it, that it's actually the way everything works. As soon as you have this sense of everything is in motion, everything is a frequency set, and it all has its own little template and frequency stamp and signature that makes it unique to what it is, and it goes about and inhabits this field of reality with a whole bunch of other individual frequency stamps. The guy that finalized the whole calculus model, Leibniz, he was also a philosopher, right? And so he looked at everything. He was kind of like Alfred North Whitehead, who was a philosopher and a mathematician. So when quantum mechanics came out, the philosophers couldn't figure it out. The mathematicians are going, well, we think it's this. And there was a whole big debate about what is this quantum model. And even today, it's been shown to be highly lacking. But what Leibniz described it was that everything was a monad, a self-reflecting individual consciousness reflecting the reality it inhabits.
But see, and that's the thing, is to his credit, Leibniz was breaking out of the Western empirical approach,
Yes.
the billiard ball approach to physics, and looking at it more from an Eastern philosophical, spiritual, integrative approach.
Right.
And that's where, you know, the quantum field, if you want to identify with fields of, or morphogenetic fields of consciousness or information beyond what we physically see represented in front of us and can access, then that blows the whole paradigm off of standard physics. We're not even talking about physics anymore, because self-avowed physicists would tell us to jump in the lake. They'd say, keep your soul stuff out of my physics.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so the limitation of the available information and being able to use critical thinking and reasoning and pattern recognition to analyze it and come up with using an objective neutrality to take in the data. And that's one of the things that can't be done in the way that we understand it in consciousness, in my opinion, without an organic form, which ties back into this whole AI thing. The whole idea of some super intelligence, general intelligence, quantum intelligence, there's all these different delineations that's being used, is the fact that, well, the problem is that there is no standard definition of consciousness to begin with. So you're already in the hole with trying to put some kind of definition and metrics around it to define it. It's like, well, okay, which version, whose interpretation, speculation are you using?
But you know what? But Robert, while you and I philosophically, while we discuss it here, the other side, if you will, they've already weaponized it. They're stealing people's consciousnesses, sticking them in like cyborg lizard bodies and sending them out to kill. So
we're just being brainwashed, full stop. I mean, we're just being brainwashed, full stop, guys. Let's face it.
So we've been brain stained. We've been brain stained, and we need to be brainwashed. We need to be brain cleansed.
Yeah, not brainwashed.
Things that bothers me is improper use or a very poorly and lazily put together definition of the weaponization of a term. That crap has been going on, and it's terrible, and it irritates the hell out of me. So that's why I jump in on these words. Like I was going to mention law, because we're talking about, Brian, the celestial laws, the divine laws, and so forth. And just like Sheldrake points out in the Science Set Free, with the 10 dogmas that are not laws at all, they are actually assumptions, is that the whole idea of using the word in the term law and applying it to nature is very anthropocentric. It's very human oriented. We have laws, tribes have customs. So a civilized world has law, environment has laws, tribes have customs and rituals. The idea that there are laws in nature is a projection of a human perspective onto nature, which to me is extremely limiting. And in fact, since at least the 10 science dogmas have been proven to be not laws, they say they're all laws, but they're not laws. There's variability, they are assumptions, they are not proven. That to me, the more accurate term of nature is characteristics and habits, the nature of nature. It apparently is continually evolving and changing. There's constants and characteristics of regular recurring cycles and forms and patterns and ideas and words, but it's in a constant motion. It's always moving forward. We are always in the next, not in the now. The now is gone. So we're always in a predictive state of consciousness because we are experiencing a reality that is in constant motion. So my point there is that I stay away from using the word law of anything. To me, I want to observe the characteristics, the attributes, the habits, the nature of something. And every time I do that, I see that it's constantly in motion. It's never static, which adds the whole value to the concept of the only constant is change.
Well, see, what I'm seeing is that we have these theorists, like the laws of energy and all that, and dynamics, but we're trying to take something that's out of our realm as quantum level. Quantum has different levels, and just like Brian was talking, the third, fourth, fifth dimension. Well, we're taking what we're seeing in our world and trying to apply to something that has more variables than we can imagine. I mean, we can't apply anything to something that has vibrations, frequencies, to an equation that has energy, mass, and I mean, they're thinking wrong. I mean, I think once we get our upgrade, all this will fall in place, and then their theories are going to have to go out the window, and we're going to have to face reality that, okay, this is our new reality. We have five different things, equations to put in this, with the frequency, vibrations, the energy. You got to add all these things to it, and I don't think we can do it right now with the technology and the mindset that we're in.
Agreed. And that's why this transformation, I think, is so profound, because it's literally turning over everything that most of us have thought about and been given explanations for the reality that we inhabit. We've been giving these laws, as I just blathered on about. We've been given rules. We've been given a history. We've been given a bunch of information and data that says, well, this is what happened, and this is the options that you have to adopt for the reason you're here and where you're going. And there's all these delineations to slice and dice the reality that we inhabit, so that our consciousness enables us, hopefully, to be somewhat productive participants in the reality we inhabit. But the problem is that the majority of it has been polluted on purpose, and it's resulted in this collapse of all the systems that were programmed to be polluted on purpose and to eventually collapse under their own weight. And that's what we're seeing. But this transformational energy is going to be some serious shit. I mean, to me, it's going to be amazingly awesome in a whole number of levels, and is to make sure that there's as much awareness of this as possible is one of the reasons I rant on ad nauseum about shit like this. Because I don't know, I could be self-deluded. Many would suggest and posit that I be. But
I agree.
I'm confident in my delusion of my perspective of and the way that it works and where it's going. Because if I listened to everybody else, I'd be one confused, out of control, carbon-based unit.
Okay,
on this note, I want to share my screen right here.
Okay.
Because right here, this is a recent post I did. Aaron Kuhn's book, Lily Nova's book, and John Whitberg's book, they all came out and arrived at the same time, along with Laura Eisenhower's book. And so these are books by people who survived some of these time travel programs, or they're star seeds. And it's this knowledge is now being revealed to us at a much greater rate than ever. So the tools are there so that we can break away from the old paradigms as they fall away. And so my argument, what's that?
Sorry, I just took it off your screen. Did I? Sorry.
No, I took it off.
All we see is your mug. Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, I was presenting. Here, I'll present it again. I did a Facebook post here, and in this post, I'm naming these 4 books that have come out very recently. Because Robert, you were saying, when this awakening is going to be wild. I'm going to say that awakening is right now. Some people, are maybe more at the forefront of it than other people, for now. And that's why we're trying to catch everyone up as best we can. But this knowledge is out there. For example, John Whitberg, his new book, The Man with Periwinkle Blue Eyes, he's basically, this is free on Scribd, okay? And he's basically giving the most detailed account of Project Ibis and some of these time travel programs that I've ever seen. It's amazing. I read it in 2 days. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go check that out.
It's amazing. And
Sounds
basically it's he's talking about the use of avatars where they can capture your soul and then stick you in an avatar clone body. And as long as that your energy and your frequency is compatible with that avatar body, they can stick you in it. So
isn't that what we saw in the Matrix?
it's like we saw in The Matrix and in a lot of other shows and movies.
Who was it? Who was it actually talking about? They were abducted and they actually saw bodies inside tubes, and that they were actually reincarnating people into these new avatars.
There's many.
Recloning them.
Donald
there's a lot
Marshall.
of that. Yeah,
Donald
there's a
Marshall
lot.
talks about that. Arkeem Ra talks about that. Things
Didn't
like
Anthony
that.
Sanchez talk about that in his Archuleta Mesa work? I think
I
he
wouldn't be
talked about that as
surprised
well.
because at Dulce base, deep underground base, I think it's sub-level 9 is known as a Hall of Horrors, and that's where they would do stuff like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the transformative energies that are coming in are not they're not localized to our spot in the galaxy, although there is some scalar energy from the core that I think is afoot as well.
I can tell you more about that too, Robert.
Yeah, I know you can, but I want to try to encapsulate several of them because I know where you're going to go with that. So, but the idea is that the energies afoot are on a cosmic level, not a galactic. They are on a cosmic level. This is a ripple through the cosmos, bigger and more and inclusive of the galactic energies that are afoot, which are also being triggered. It's just like our Earth's geomagnetic field is triggered when the sun kicks off. Well, scale that up, get outside of the solar system, get into a galaxy, and you got the same scale. There you go. Exactly right.
Just for Claudette, here's Laura Eisenhower's new book. Yeah.
Nice.
So the scale.
So, well, let me tell you the rest of these.
I'll have to get Laura on very soon. I do have her email address. She said she will come on a long time ago. I haven't been in touch with her for a while, but
I've been in touch with her.
I did a show with her
busy.
I did a show with her about 4 or 5 years ago. I need a reboot. But all of these frequency changes are happening on a cosmic level. It is a cosmic cycle and flow of energy that's coming through. So everything is affected. Not only us, but our cosmic cousins are going through the same energetic changes. They're getting their stuff, however you want to define it, whether it's a karmic frequency cycle or if it's something else afoot, doesn't matter. Everyone in the cosmos as we know it is going through this effect. And it's affecting each one of them individually, collectively, and as our cosmic cousins. The entire existence of life is getting I don't know if it's a reboot or if it's a cleanse or a little bit of both, a frequency shift just in general, a higher dimensional or a different dimensional. And to me, that's all just another set of frequencies. The whole interdimensional thing is, to me, it's another component of fields in the infinite field of frequencies. So it's just another realm within that overall frequency set.
So when's the nexus wave going to come across this?
Yeah, there's a ripple coming through, and everybody's getting it. It's like, so how they react is the fascinating part to try to analyze by paying attention and being aware of it, and then trying to figure out, well, what does it mean? What's the trend analysis? Where is this directionally going? And I think that's actually one of the things, and I'll finish with this, Brian, and I like your thoughts on this piece too. I think that precognition, non-local consciousness, perceptive and predictive capabilities are all a natural part of the consciousness that makes up who we are. Those are natural skills and talents and abilities that are inherent in the conscious expression that we are through the energy and the frequency fields that manifest our materium.
So
I think that those skills are the ability to see the pattern recognition and trend directionality of the frequency set. I think that that's where the ability to go and do remote viewing, go non-local consciousness, the ability to dial in a frequency set and to go examine the frequency set that's in that frequency field, in that spectrum, is how that consciousness psychic ability actually works. Now, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you're speaking to the development of consciousness, and it's like a spiral. And so this gets us to, and Garrow's asking about this, like, where is the Earth now, and when is this change going to happen? And I'm kind of starting to solidify my conceptualization of this as think of Earth as the tip of the second hand on a cosmic clock. Okay. And that cosmic clock is about to strike midnight. And while you might say, who cares about the second hand, right? What's the significance of the second hand? Well, at the point where you're at the 1 or 2 or 3 seconds before you hit midnight and you're about to come out of the darkness and emerge on the other side of midnight. Okay, that's where Earth is. And literally, when you look at it, where you've got the Milky Way with the cosmic center, and then you've got like the 8 spiral arms coming off the Milky Way, and then we're Earth on the end of a spiral arm like number 5, on the outer arm. Okay, so we're one of the younger planets in groupings in the relatively more nature preserve, as opposed to where the galactic center, where Orion, the Orion Wars, Lyra, Vega, our galactic origins as humanity comes from. Now what's happened is you've had all this action in the galactic center for all this time. It's spread out to the Earth. The Earth has become kind of like the needle on the last straw on the camel's back, if you will, for cosmic change and justice. And so what's happening is all throughout the universe, it seems like there's being a reset. And it seems like Earth is a very second hand of that. And once Earth hits that midnight strike, if you will, as we go around the galactic center, our arm right now apparently is actually entering into a section of the universe where it's higher levels of energy. And so we're literally entering a higher energy, higher vibration part of the universe. And this is what the Mayan calendar 2012 and other things were apparently referencing, is a changeover. This is a change from the age of Pisces into Aquarius, right? It's a dawn. I hate that fucking song, but it's so cheesy.
It rocked back in the day. Come on.
I don't know how you guys got down
I
that
just
shit.
said that the other day to my wife. I said,
What are you smoking?
It wasn't that song from the musical Hair, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a shit.
Well, it was a single that they put into the musical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your wife likes that song, Garrel?
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. I don't think we've entered the age of Aquarius. I think we're right there getting ready to.
Yes. And that's what's happening now. This is a manifestation of that. We're at the bottom end, seeing society at its most absolute ridiculous and crumbling. And accompanying that, unfortunately, is going to be a population shift, die off for the people who don't.
It's not everybody's time, and you have to recognize that.
Yeah. That's a fourth. That's a fifth density way of thinking. It's not
everybody's turn or time to make that transition, and that's okay.
They need more time on the playground and in school. It's okay.
Exactly right.
You don't jump a third grader to college. That ain't right.
That's going to be a mess for everybody. That's not going to work.
Yeah, and so they don't let it happen.
I agree with you, Brian. I think that's another aspect and perspective of what I was saying, and that I think that we're in a cosmic change. There are different delineations that we can kind of suss out of the information that we've got, like what you were talking about in our arm of the galaxy entering into a different energetic space in the cosmos.
And you know why that's important, Robert? You know why it's important? Because you may have heard this. Did you realize that all suns in our universe are linked together? Mm-hmm. And not only are they linked together in such a way that they are portals. You can portal from one sun through other suns to other suns. Yeah. Any other sun you can get through through the sun system.
Here's an interesting concept.
Wait, hold on a second.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
And then what it was is, as our sun and our Earth ascends and that vibrates on our sun, that's going to ripple through our sun, then out back to all the other suns. And that's
Mhm.
why it really is. We are the greatest show in the universe right now, because per Dolores Cannon, we're the only world ever in this known universe where the Earth and its main civilization, humanity, are ascending at the same time from third to fourth to fifth density consciousness.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead, B.
yeah, there was. I mean, even NASA talks about there's a porthole on with the sun, and
Yeah.
there's a connection. But now they're working on how to mathematically work out where it is. That's the thing.
Well, they open up all the
interesting-
time.
But interesting thing, let's look at the biblical sense, the word, right? When in the biblical sense, when they talk about the raptures, doesn't necessarily mean you're physically gone. To me, it could be also what they call consciously aware, is the ascension, right? And then we got the second coming. Second coming is the awareness of love and peace, and
In all of us.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean a physical being named Jesus is going to turn up tomorrow, but his teachings.
Yeah.
of his
Jesus has been here
teachings
the
is
whole
going to
time. He's been here the
Exactly.
whole time.
But now everybody becomes more aware and conscious that this is the way to go. It's a teaching and an understanding. I mean, let's get away from the dogma, because we are conditioned with the religious dogma, right? We're getting hit across the head with the Bible. We're getting hit across the head with everything else.
Well,
You know?
I love to do. I love to out Bible the Christians.
Oh yes.
That's how I do it. Is they'll say, oh, you're talking about witchcraft and sorcery people who are having dreams and visions, and I'll say, no, Jesus said that we're going to do many more miracles than him, thousands of times over.
Yeah.
Old men would dream dreams, and young people would see visions and prophecy, blah 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 blah.
Hey,
So
all
I
those-
love out Bibling.
To all those Christians out there, Jesus was not a born again. He wasn't a Catholic. he was a teacher, and he was known that. It was 150 to 160 years after his death. A man named Terrellium or some name. He actually did a study on Jesus, right? And he declared him as a Trinity, a three gods in one. One person, in his own personal studies, turned around and said this: 90% of Christians of the day wouldn't accept it. They knew it.
Yeah, because that was a Catholic invention under the Roman Empire, because they needed to consolidate Christianity, or reconcile Christianity and paganism.
Constantine pulled it all together and
yes, exactly right. Now,
and I mean, the whole, I had a Christian ministry back in the early 80s. We had a music group, and we ministered at youth authorities and rest homes and prisons and beat people over the head with the Bible. It was a Pentecostal version of Christianity.
I blame you.
which is one of the more interesting and more eclectic. I mean, you got not only speaking in tongues, but laying on hands of the sick and casting out demons and devils. And
I'm for that part. I'm all for. Hey, I'm all that part's cool. The snake part, holy rolling shit, and that part.
That kind of gets a little out there.
Come on, now listen. Remember, there's over 4,000 religions, but don't worry, yours is the right one.
That's right. Yeah.
But being a non-believer is a religion too.
They just have one less God. Right, that's the whole thing about an atheist. So you got one less God.
So, I mean, you can be a non-believer and create your own religion by not believing.
Yeah.
I became theology free when I turned it into a study as opposed to a habit.
Hey, here's something, guys.
So I looked at the theologies of all, because I was exposed to Methodist Christianity when I was young, but not any big degree. Did some Sunday school, and then I did the whole conversion thing into being baptized, born again, and all that in the Pentecostal church. And the more I studied it and the more questions I asked, the more answers I kept getting that just ended up with, well, you just got to have faith. I said, I don't know. I got this thing that I feel in my bones when I really resonate with something. And later found out that the word for that was gnosis, the original Greek of our word knowledge, or to know. And then I found out that term was much more nuanced and other levels to it, meaning that when they used the word, They meant something that you only knew it in your head, but you felt it in your bones.
Gnosis.
And I
Here's a
went, no,
question.
see,
Hey,
I
listen,
can resonate with that. And the more I dug into stuff, the more I started realizing that the only way that I can spend when I get into something, I don't do a head first and I don't do a feet first. I do a jackknife and I go straight in and I just absorb it. My curiosity gets unleashed in my overly fertilized field of imagination, and I just start going rooting around.
yeah.
I
Well,
want
here's
to
a
see what's
question.
in there. I want to know what the hell is going on. And the more I did that, the more I
Mhm.
realized that theology was just another construct of reality.
Here's an
It's another
interesting question for you,
example of
Robert.
somebody trying to define the reality that I'm inhabiting and giving me their rules for how I need to conduct myself in this reality that they have constructed based on their own speculative bullshit and whatever else they got going on. Once I did that, I got out of this religious stuff and I started focusing just on reality, on
Yeah,
consciousness, not anybody's wraps and bows and
yeah.
cards and pretty shit that they've put into the package. No, I want to know what the nut of the nugget is. And
Mm.
I will back myself out from that nut with my own interpretation of what that actually means. Once I
Well,
got there, I became free of all of this original sin and all of these shackles and rules and guardrails within which I must handle myself and navigate reality. Because I found out that a lot of it was very constricting, and once
uh,
I got out of all that shit, I started
and
finding out.
contradicting as well. Look, you get to the point here, right? We are
What?
taught in religion, when we say religion, right? And even in Christianity, it says God knows you before you know yourself. He knows you, he knows your beginning, he knows your end, right? And this is the teaching, right? He knows you, knows your beginning, knows the end. He's a God of love. So, okay, I ask myself, well, what's the purpose of life? If he knows that you're going to go to freaking hell, what's your purpose of existence? Where's your free will? If he knows your beginning and knows your end. And if he's a God of love, why did he create evil? And why did he create hell? If he didn't create evil and didn't create hell, there wouldn't be any freaking problems, would there?
Well, you're making my point, Terry. All of
Well,
that
no,
is
I'm just saying. I'm just
all of
throwing
that.
out a
Can I
little.
answer that, Terry? Can I answer that?
Control
Yeah, go for it.
to give you a way to think, and it's all bullshit.
It's a very so. First of all, it's a very third density worldview
Yes.
that has been foisted upon us, and even in Christ, you know, in the Bible today, they left out reincarnation, and I keep bringing this up. When first of all, his name wasn't Jesus. They didn't have that's Greek. Greek is they turned his name into Greek to get Jesus because the letter J doesn't exist in Aramaic. It was
Well, hey,
Yeshua.
Roberts
Yeah.
actually sent me some information some time back where they didn't even speak Greek those days. Everybody spoke Latin.
Yeah. Well, it's Aramaic. It's Aramaic,
Yeah.
not Latin.
Yeah.
Aramaic or
whatever.
Hebrew.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
actually called Latin. So, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so they but yeah, it was where was he going with that? Yeshua.
Sorry about that, man.
Reincarnation didn't exist back then, so they took a lot out of the Bible, needless to say. And what's been foisted on us, a third density way of looking at the world, that's what it was. Is you were making the comment, Terry, of like how do you determine what was, I forget your question.
If God can
Oh yeah,
actually knows your beginning and knows your end, what's the purpose?
So the purpose is free will. Okay, the purpose is development, and you have to and so to make it easy to us humans, you have to look at it from parents and a child. Okay, if you have a child and you truly love your child, you raise your child in a way that you try to give them the foundation of love and teach them. But then ideally, if you truly love that child, you send them forth in the world to do as they will. And you're not,
I hear
the
what you're
bad
saying.
parents are the parents who say, you're going to be a doctor and you're going to be a lawyer. No, a true loving parent sets their child free to learn and experience and love and grow. the
I
good and
hear
the
what you're
bad of
saying. I
life.
hear what you're saying,
Okay.
but
So then
I
when
think
people say, well, oh my God, God put us in this life, how can all this terrible stuff happening? If he put us in a life where terrible couldn't happen, then we'd be in a life where good couldn't happen either.
yeah,
So
I-
how fair would that be?
yeah, but how fair would it be if he knows your beginning, he knows your end? What's the purpose of existing in the first place? He knows you're going to go to, if it's so-called hell. If you know you're going to go to
But
hell
that's
before you're
but
born.
see,
Well, that
because you got to drop because
you know,
first of all, drop the notion of hell. See what
yeah, I
happened
know.
is
That's,
you
that's just
superimposed
control.
into the whole
no, that's
equation.
hell is a medieval period.
Right. That's like
you
us
know?
talking about we're going to race the Indy 500, and I say, well, what if Santa Claus appears and we run over him?
Yeah, I know. Look. I know the hell
Well,
construct came back
I think
in the medieval days during the Inquisition when they used to burn people. What they call the peasants be watching somebody being burnt to the stake. You go against the church, you go against God, and if you go against God, you're going to burn for eternity. Right, and they're preaching this while the person's being burnt to the stake, screaming. They're
But
putting fear
but Terry,
into
well,
them.
let me jump in here real quick because Brian, you mentioned something that is another one of my pet peeves, and that's the concept of free and will, and those two words put together and the construct of do we have free will? There's a lot of very
absolutely yes, and I can answer that for you.
right,
I
but
agree with you,
Robert,
Claudette. I
I'm going to make
agree
it
with
real
her.
simple. I'm going to make it really simple. Every choice in your life, every moment in your life, you have a choice
yeah,
of love or fear. Every single choice that you make in your life can be can be defined in comparison to love and fear. So when I talk about free will, I'm not talking about do I have the free will to necessarily be a millionaire or to be a world class scientist or whatever. I'm talking about the free will to have the choice in whatever situation
yeah.
I'm in at any given moment to make a choice for love or for fear. That's what
Well,
I mean when I say free will.
well, I understand that and I agree with it. My point
Okay.
is this: the concept of free will is being challenged in all of these scholarly and all of these learned debates of bullshit, and everybody's going on around. Well, do you really? I heard this guy with Kurt
$1,000,000. Sorry, just kidding.
right, right. Well, it's not manifestation. That's a different thing. Free will is the ability to make a choice, and the choice is at the granular subatomic level, if you will,
It's a
and
spiritual choice.
being aware of that ability of having, it speaks to the whole thing of being co-creators, right? And when people talk about we co-create with the universe, well, what does that mean? Well, that means making a willful decision and choice to put intent to engage in an action that will then manifest the frequencies that will head in that direction. It doesn't
That's
mean
free
that
will. So you would say
it's
that's
free
free will.
will,
That sounds like free
right?
will to me.
So yeah, so I every time somebody says, "Well, we really don't have free will," and there's some really smart people
Yeah, I know.
that intellectually, otherwise,
It's all masturbation. I'll talk to them about it.
are just
So
are
bad.
amazing, but some of them fall right off the table
It's
with
because
this.
they're stuck in third density thinking. They can't get out of the box. All they see is I live, I die, I'm worm food. If that's your worldview, then of course there's no such fucking thing as free will because
Yeah,
nobody
exactly.
would choose that. So by
And that's
definition, it's a paradox. That's why it's like, just get to the
yeah,
fourth density people. Okay.
it's the,
Fifth density.
exactly.
Now we can talk intelligently, unlike goldfish swimming in the same fucking bowl over and over.
Well, and that's one of the big
These
problems.
supposedly intelligent people don't turn out to be nearly as intelligent as they say or think they are.
One of my favorite lines was this character called Yo-Yo in Agents of Shield, which I think if you haven't seen Marvel's Agents of Shield, 7 seasons, some of the best
Wow.
storyline tech. I mean, just an amazing series, one of the best in my opinion. But one of the things that she says, they were in one of the episodes, there was some alien force they were trying to fight back on a ship somewhere, and they were running out of options, and they said, well, this person went off to do this, and she looks at him, she says, smart people can be stupid. And I just said, nailed it. I mean, that's as simple as it gets, because there is a great deal of three-dimensional very limited, very grit, billiard ball model orientation of reality that people inhabit. I heard this, I've listened to it a couple of times now. Bernardo Kastrup, who's a philosopher doing a lot of great work, had a discussion with Avi Loeb, the physicist, right? And it was very fascinating. The idea was to have one was philosophy, one was a physicist, and where does any of their stuff overlap? And I was listening to Avi Loeb's stuff, and I was thinking, are you really? He kept going on about artificial intelligence is going to reach this magical point when he kept bringing up GPT-5.
Right, because in Avi Loeb's world, there's no such thing as a soul.
Right? I mean, I kept listening, hearing the same thing.
So far, you can go with that, guys. Like,
right.
It's not very.
So listening to Bernardo Kastrup, who's just a brilliant mind, in my opinion, his whole philosophy is idealism, which is basically, consciousness. Everything is consciousness. He asked questions. He sat back very.
So he's almost as bad as Avi. Instead of saying there is no soul, he reduces the soul to consciousness. That's it.
Bernardo?
Yeah, Bernardo. It sounds like he's only one step less bad.
No. He doesn't reduce the soul. He does something very, which is one of the reasons I find him fascinating. Is very similar to my approach.
I mean, like, would he acknowledge a soul matrix and then levels of density up to God?
He recognizes what he refers to as different degrees of consciousness, which is the same thing that Sheldrake talks about, which I think makes sense. And degrees meaning, kind of different levels, but different manifestations. And you can look at the 3D through the 5D.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like density. Right? That sounds like the same language. That's the same type of language. Is a model that can at least grasp these states of existence.
Exactly.
And if a model disavows whole states of existence that apply, then you're not going to get very far with that model. And that's why they never have.
Another thing, I think, Brian, you and I may have talked about this, but another one that I saw recently that just blew my mind, sadly, was when Kurzweil went on Rogan. This was about a month ago. And Kurzweil's in his mid-80s, I think. And for those who don't know who he is, he's not only the inventor of one of the most famous and well-used synthesizers and keyboards in the music world, but he's the transhumanist guy. He's the singularity guy. There's this moment of singularity where everything converges and becomes whatever it's supposed to flower into as a result of that singularity. And it took him at least 30 seconds to come up with a few word sentence answering Rogan's question. But the majority of the time he kept coming back, well, we're in a time of exponential change. When he didn't have an answer to whatever, and Rogan I'm sitting there, I'm watching this going, Joe's running circles around Ray? Well,
yeah.
Wait a minute, hold on one second. I got to say that.
Because what Ray is, and we'd love to, type out your exciting newscastle, dude. But Ray is peddling old wares. He's peddling he's peddling an old Star Trek episode from the 70s.
Right.
When the new shit is like bio-aware computers with angelic beings interacting with ETs.
Agreed. I see that same thing. And I was
it's stale. It's fucking stale. It's so old. I'd love to get in debate with 40-year-old Ray Kurzweil,
exactly.
and beat the shit out of him in a debate.
So one of the things that I was so taken back by that, I was very disappointed in seeing how feeble and just out of it Ray was. And he was going on about, he's been taking these 80 supplements for the last 40 years, and it's supposed to, give him another 20 or 30 years of life. I'm looking at him going, dude, you're running out of gas on the show. I mean, there's whatever that is, it clearly isn't working. And if you think it is, you're taking the wrong meds.
Man shall not live on bread and supplements alone.
That's right.
Okay, Ray, something called a soul. If you had some more soul, you'd look a lot younger, buddy.
Well, and so I felt, and I do this once in a while because, it's my personality. I like go poking on people when I think I got something to poke at them about. So I got on that comment and I said, for those of you that have been, hoping for the singularity and transhuman and everything, I give you the example of why it's not going to happen by watching this show. It was it was one of the most sad and pathetic things that I'd seen in a long time. And it was not that I believed in Ray, but it was just seeing someone who's professing all of this longevity and super this and human that, just basically deteriorating, sitting across the table, not being able to answer questions from a comedian.
Hey,
First of all,
excuse me for a moment, please, guys. I've just got to send a message out to Castle, dude. Castle, dude. All I'm going to say is, mate, be careful that you don't end up with some crazy kind of rash tomorrow.
Wear 2 condoms.
Yeah, what do they say over there in the British Isles? Don't forget to wear your rubbers.
Well, my God, Gerald. Yeah, what do you, Gerald? We got to educate this guy, Castle, dude. God, I couldn't.
I'm not so sure that I'm responsible for helping corrupt.
I know.
Your fault, Carol.
He's part of our friend group. You know what I mean? So we've all got to look. We stand up for your support there. Go for it, mate. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say. Yeah. Anyway, have a good time, Castle, dude. Have a good time.
I'm gonna bow out. I got things to do, so I'm gonna leave you guys to your own.
I got to do the same. This was totally screwed up my day, and now I got to go reconnoiter the unconnoitered.
I've had doing that to people. Anyway, Gerald, thank you very much for joining us, mate. We are on today, are we there, Robert?
Today, tomorrow, our time. I mean,
tomorrow, our time.
Yeah, we're going to try to do a little bit of more of a music kind of show.
Well,
we did that last night.
What time it is here?
We did it last night, and we're kind of poking the copyright cops and seeing what they do and what they don't. And here's an interesting little finding: we played all kinds of shit, and I've got Gerald and I were talking about this, and Clay, the conspiracy music guy, was on the show a week ago Saturday, and he did a live performance with his guitar and his jam tracks. And it came off very nice. And I've been wanting to do this. I've got the same kind of setup, but I haven't turned mine on. So we're going to try to do both. First of all, back to the copyright thing. Last night we played a bunch of stuff, and YouTube, no copyright issues, nothing. Facebook's came up and said, Warner and Sony have flagged your content as being theirs, and therefore no one can see your video on this platform. So we're sitting there going, Facebook has gotten all their panties in a wad and YouTube didn't. And all the shit that I played was off of YouTube, right? Yeah. So anyway, we're going to do a kind of a music thing tomorrow. We're all going to bring 3 pieces of music that we think are cool and you may not know about. So we're going to go the indie route of who knows what genre and what we're going to pop up, but I've got a library of thousands of them.
I might just tune up my guitar there and play a couple if I come on and play a couple of my own originals, my own compositions. I mean, hey, Gerald's heard a couple of them, haven't you, Gerald?
Yeah, I have.
What worth listening to, aren't they, mate?
Yeah, very
you better
good.
say yes.
There's Clay now in chat.
Pardon?
Well, Clay's in, yeah. So we're going to fire it up tomorrow, our time, which will be in about about 24 hours, more than that. Yeah, it's going to be tomorrow evening. It'll be
Sunday, my time.
9 p.m. Central or Eastern. So gauge your clocks accordingly if you want to join in.
I think
it's going to be a music go round.
I think that's 11 a.m. my time Sunday,
and see what we come up with. And we will be streaming to 5 different channels on 4 different platforms. So we'll be streaming to X, to Rumble, and 2 YouTube channels. Is that right? 5? Yeah. Then X.
Well,
Facebook.
you will be, but
Facebook.
I'll be only doing my own 3 channels. So because
No,
I don't have,
this isn't about you. This isn't about you. This
I
is
know.
our show.
What?
You, I am hosting the music go round.
Yes, and
so
you hold the button. You've got the button in controlled. I know.
You
I know.
will get your pass via a link, and it will be going out to those 5 different Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X. And
there is no free
do I
will
have
in the next,
to
Terry.
sign a disclaimer before I come on your show?
What's that, Gerald?
I said there is no free will in the Nexus, Terry. You will conform to our ways.
Yeah. We have the will. It's not free.
All I can say is wankers. That's all. Oh, I don't know. God, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Anyway, you're going, Brian, are you, mate? Hey, thanks for joining us, mate. Absolutely wonderful having you here. And
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Gerald. Wonderful having you here, mate, as usual. You don't say much, but I can read your face at times when we're really pressing the buttons. And for you, Mr. Robert Bauer, thank you for joining us, mate. And I'll be looking forward to our next session on Mr. B and friends and everybody in chat. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Tickle that little button down there and tickle the subscribe button. Much appreciated. But if you want to keep putting up with me, that's what you got to do. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and don't forget to come again. Remember, if you can't be good, don't get caught. Be nice, be kind, and aspire to inspire one another. That's the most important thing. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye now.